Welcome back to episode 49. So last week you saw me finish off the hard brake lines, the brake pressure regulators in, master brake cylinders in, and I've chased the pipes all the way down to the calipers but got stuck there because I realised I hadn't got the wheel bearings in. So in this week's video we're going to be putting those bearings in. I also want to spend a little bit of time torquing up all of the front suspension. So there's a lot of bolts that I've put in there and I've held off tightening everything up until I know that everything's correct. But now I think we're ready. I also want to try and get to the point of getting one of the calipers connected up. The problem with all that is that I don't have front discs. The discs they came with the car. I've just got them out and looked at them. They're very corroded and pitted. I was hoping I'd be able to skim those down, but it's not going to happen. So I'm on the search for new front discs, if anyone knows where I can buy them. This uses the 20mm thick discs and not the 30mm, which most sort of later cars use. Which are quite difficult to source. So I've emailed out a few companies and hoping that they'll come back and tell me that they've got them. But anyway, let's dive on in there. Thank you for watching as ever. Please click that subscribe button, like the videos, comments, all that sort of stuff. But let's get in and just see how we get on this week. Right, with the bearings, there's nothing massively complicated here. What I need to do first is just wipe out the hub to make sure it's nice and clean. So I'm just using WD-40 for that, which will also use as a lubricant as well. Let's just make sure it's nice and clean. Now I'm pressing these in by hand, which you can do on the front. The rear hubs I believe I'm going to need a proper press for, but these ones I can do with basically a bearing set of bearing presses. So the little shapes that you just smash down on top of the bearing just to get it seated. Right, with the hub cleaned up, I've got the bearings out the freezer. Now these bearings have been in the freezer probably 2 months, where I had thought I'd do this job a lot sooner, and I didn't. So they've just sat there. Now the good thing about putting them in the freezer is that they chill down and shrink, making it easier to put them in. So I'm going to do the outer bearing first. Let's get it out of its pack. Right, and we've got basically a bearing and a race, and what we're going to be doing is pressing the race in to the hub. Let's just check if I've got the right tool. Second, just to check which one's which. It's slightly too big. There, perfect. Okay, and that just sits neatly. So I'm going to I'll just wipe the edge around a little bit. Actually, it's so cold I can see frost on it. Let's just pop that in. Make sure it's straight to start with. Right, I'll put it on a wooden block. Actually, it's probably okay like this. The other ones I'll pop on a wooden block, but this one we'll just go straight in like this. So I'm just going to tap it gently with a hammer. Make sure it stays square. Let's give it a couple more taps, just to be sure. As you can hear, the sound has changed. It's become a more solid sound, which means it's hitting the bottom of the hub now. You probably can't see from there, but that's fully down. So that's one in. Obviously the bearing then we just drop in there, but I need to pack that full of grease. But we do that in a little while. Let's pop that out of the way for a second. So now what we're going to do is turn it over, and we'll do the other side. I just switched my bearing tool over. Now this side, I'm going to put on wooden blocks because I don't want to hammer on these studs and risk damaging them. So let's just mount it like this. Right, it's not the most professional outfit, but that'll do. Okay, so with the hub resting neatly on some bits of wood, throw the bearing around. Now we need to press in the other race. So I'm just going to wipe it out one more time, just make sure there's no little iron filings or aluminium filings that have come out from pushing that last race in. There we go. Right, make sure it's secured on the bits of wood. Tiny bit of WD-40 just to help. And let's line it up. Certainly a tight fit. Like that. Now, my guess was, yes, the right one. Okay, so let's just tap that one in now. Right, and the sound's changed. So my bet is when we turn this over, we'll see that it's actually fully down. Let's have a look. Looks like it to me. Quite hard to tell, to be honest. Yeah, there's no gap at all. I can't get my fingernail beneath it, so that's fully down now. Okay, that wasn't so bad. So let's just wipe it out in case there's any aluminium filings again from that smashing. Right, wood blocks out of the way. No, we need the wood block still because we're going to be putting in this bearing with the seal behind it. So now I'm going to pack the bearing. I'm using the grease that came with the kit. I've also got some extra bearing grease on the side here. Now the technique here, if I just squirt some into the palm of my hand, what we need to do is try and work the grease all the way into each bearing. I'm going to just work my way round, forcing it into the little gap around the outside. And then we'll run the bearing a little bit on my fingers and just ensure that all the grease gets between all the rollers, and then we'll do the same again and make sure it's really in there. You can see what I'm doing, kind of just scraping it and forcing it into that gap. There's the gap here. Right, so that's all the way around once. So now what we're going to do is do the same on the other side. There's a smaller gap on the other side. So let's just get a little bit in there. It's pretty messy stuff, but that's okay by me. And then the stuff I took off my fingers goes on the outside, and let's just run the bearing a fraction just to make it, that's it, just get the grease sort of working its way in. I'll make sure it's fully around all the rollers. Alright, okay, so now what I want to do is just drop that bearing in, which I'm going to do now. Like that. I'll wipe my fingers off. Okay, with the bearing sat in there now, I'm going to put a little bit of my other bearing grease in, just around the top. I'm just paranoid, I really want it to have enough grease in there. Right. Okay. We're good to go. So now we're going to press in the seal. Let's give it a quick blow off, make sure it's all clear. A bit too much grease there. Right, so let's find the correct press for the right size. So that's a pretty good guess. Okay, right, so that's the seal in as well. Now we can go and put this on the spindle and put the other bearing in. Right then, down in the action, I've torqued up the dust shield, so that's done. What we need to do now is slide on the hub, which should just push on. I should just check. On the last one I dropped a bit of seam sealant and it took me a little while to chisel it off, but that's pretty smooth. So we just slide this one on here. we need to pack out the other bearing. So again, I'm going to use the bearing grease that came with the bearing kit as opposed to my one, just in case there's some differences. Pretty good. Just ooze it in like I did last time, going around that, trying to force it into that crease, that sort of gap between the two sides of the bearing, the cases. All the way around one side, then we'll do the other side. Certainly messy work. Right, and now let's just work it in. A bit too much grease on this one, but that's fine. Try and just get the bearing to turn. I think my fingers are just turning within it at the moment. There we go, right. So just turn it around a few times, make sure that the grease is all around the runners. That's pretty good. Okay. Try and slide that in. A little bit greasy now. Should just be able to push it on. There we go, like that. Right, so I've tightened up the locking nut. Now what I'm going to do is, I was just checking the workshop manual exactly how to do this. You tighten it up, and then you undo it until the washer can just be moved with your fingers, which is about there. I can just move it with my fingers. So I'm going to declare that correct. I think it's one of those ones that's a little bit by feel. Literally, because you have to do it with your finger. Okay, this tightens up to 15 Newton meters. So let's just, I might need my smaller torque wrench, but this goes down to just under 20. It's a little bit, hard to see exactly what it's set to when it's this low. There we go. Right. And can I still move the washer? Yeah, I can still move the washer. Okay, so that's fine. And that's quite nice actually. Good. Okay, and then we put the protective dust cap on. I'm going to drive that in with a hammer later. But that's the hub, the wheel hub wrapped up, new bearings, and we can start bringing everything else back together now. Right, after a lot of debating, discussing and fruitless searching, what I've decided to do is actually use the old discs. They are a bit rusty, but they are consumable. So I figured me putting them on there isn't a life or death decision. Well, it is if they fail. What I mean is I can put them on, it doesn't halt progress, so I can keep pushing on with the build. And in the background I'm going to be trying to source the correct discs, but they are proven pretty tricky at the moment. Well, tricky if you want to pay a reasonable price. And these aren't, I mean, it's not that they're worn, they're just a little bit rusty. And I think I'll probably try to get them skimmed, but I am desperate to keep going with the build. So what I'm going to do is put them on, build up all the brake system, knowing that I can just switch them out at any point, or just whip them to the local shop and just get them skimmed. But I mean, there's no rust on them. There's no corrosion or wear on them. They actually look pretty much new. I think it's like there's no scoring. I think they've probably changed, and then the car sat for however many years it was static for, and they ended up looking like this. So that's what I'm going to do. So that means I can get a caliper on. So I'm going to quickly try and do that now before the end of this video, and see where I get to. And then background on the other side, just to keep you on your toes. I've got the calipers that I rebuilt last time, a few months ago now actually. So it should just be a matter of slotting them in between the knuckle and the dust shield. The dust shield has the bolt attached. So I'm hoping I can just, if I can get one bolt in, it will support it while I do the other. Let's have a look. think I got it first time. Bound to happen sooner or later. It must be up the right way because the bleed nipple is at the top. So that should be okay. If I get the other bolt in. Let's just quickly wind them in. I've got it as well. Look at that. Right, with the caliper all screwed in, it should be a matter of screwing this flexible brake cable in. I know what you're thinking, why didn't I do that when the caliper was off? I don't have a good answer for that. It really would have been easier, wouldn't it? But here we are. So let's get this screwed in. Okay, so I've confirmed on the bench that these do actually fit, so I've wound one into the other caliper. So I'm back to try again. What I've done on this one is actually put a little bit of seam sealant on. I haven't seen it mentioned anywhere, but I think it's probably good practice to you put the pads in next. This is a floating caliper, so it's a bit loose until you got the pads in that hold it away from the disc. So it just grinds on the disc at the moment if I turn it. I'm pleased I got the correct setting for the wheel bearing because it did feel a bit tight, and then when I looked on the workshop manual it told me a nice easy way of getting it correct, and that feels really good now. Right, so that's finger tight, so we're starting to work our way back, bleed nipples in. Okay, that's looking pretty good, happy with that. So let's have a look at the pads. So since I'm using the original discs, I'm also going to use the original pads, which is probably sacrilege, but I do see them as wear items. It doesn't really match at this stage, I don't think. You know, these are old, it doesn't matter, they match the disc still. Whew. Right. We're in anyway. Okay, so that goes in there. So I think that's all I'm going to get time for this week. Over the moon I managed to get one of those calipers on. I never thought I was going to get there. And just to sort of clarify, I only use seam sealant on the flexible line going into the caliper. I've not used it on any other brake lines. I'll rely on my flares to secure those. But I never thought I was going to get down to getting a brake line on, so I'm really pleased with that. In the next, sort of probably over the next few days, I'll tighten up all of the brake lines all the way back up to the master cylinder, and maybe next video, the video after that, we can put some brake fluid in and check whether it works. Discs. So I did reuse the original discs with the original pads. They really aren't worn. It's just, when I look at it, it's just surface rust that you get, you know, sitting in a car park for a few weeks. What I expect to happen is when I do get the car out on the road, they'll shine up. If they don't, we'll just put some new discs and pads in. It's not a big problem, you know, the consumable items anyway. And in reality, the car's going to be sitting for quite a lot of time, you know, a long time anyway. You know, the engine's still out, so I think it'll be fine. So next week, what I'm planning to do is finish tidying up the engine bay. I want to torque everything up because there's still nothing really torqued up on the car, certainly in terms of the front suspension. I want to get all that torqued up tight, get all the brake lines tight, maybe even get some fluid in, although I need to decide what I'm going to do with the brake lines going to the rear of the car. Yeah, lots coming up, lots of things coming up. But anyway, wrapping up, thank you again for watching, subscribing, liking, commenting, all of that stuff, and I'll see you next time.